And while we track the developments in Ukraine, here's one story that we've been bringing you since day one. What is happening in Canada? The truckers' siege has finally ended. The blockade has been cleared out. The police have regained control. Ottawa has returned to normalcy. But despite all of this, a state of emergency still persists in the country. Why is that? If the blockade is over, why isn't the emergency over? Because the Canadian Prime Minister says he needs emergency powers to maintain public order. His critics say this is an overreach, that Justin Trudeau is abusing his power. A fierce debate has kicked off. Our next report has all the details.
Canada's trucker siege has ended. The last big rigs have been towed out. The sound of blaring horns is gone. Ottawa's streets are back to normalcy. For the first time in weeks, there's only snow and silence in the country's capital, as the authorities breathe a sigh of relief.
We promised that we would return our city to a state of normalcy. With every hour, we are getting closer to that goal. City crews are clearing and plowing the affected areas. As I said, at this time, checkpoints remain throughout the city. We ask residents to respect these checkpoints and the officers who are working there.
The blockade is mostly over. The police have regained control. But despite this, a state of emergency persists. Why? Because the Prime Minister of Canada says he still needs emergency powers to stop any future anti-government protests.
But even though the blockades are lifted across border openings right now, even though things seem to be resolving very well in Ottawa, this state of emergency is not over. There continues to be real concerns about the coming days. But we will continue to evaluate every single day whether or not it is time and we are able to lift this state of emergency.
The decision may have been taken by Trudeau, but it also has the backing of Canada's Parliament. On Monday, it approved the Emergencies Act by a swift vote of 185 to 151. This is the second time the Canadian government has invoked the Emergencies Act. The last time it was invoked, Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, was in power. This act grants the government broader powers to rein in future threats. The government can now stop public gatherings, restrict the use of public property for protests, and control the movement of protesters. Trudeau says these powers are important to maintain public order. His critics say he's abusing his power. They're calling the emergency unnecessary and unconstitutional. Interim Conservative leader Candice Bergen has described Trudeau's move as an overreach. She also sought the criteria for this emergency to be declared. Conservative MP Dean Allison has described the decision as an authoritarian military-style measure. And Green Party member Mike Morris says invoking the act is an inappropriate response to failure in policing. It most certainly is. Canada has faced terror attacks, national movements, economic collapses, and a pandemic. All these situations were dealt with using existing laws, using the normal democratic processes. But the truckers' protest, which has largely been peaceful, is being subjected to the strictest law in the country, the Emergencies Act. Not only does this reveal the current government's failures to handle the protests, but it also sets the wrong precedent. It will give future governments in Canada an opportunity to invoke such powers for political reasons. As for Justin Trudeau, the poster boy of liberal politics is proving to be an authoritarian. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.